And we are live. Hello, everyone. This is My Two Cents. For those of you who are just tuning in, which should be all of you because I just started this, this is not Today with 2 Cents. That weekly news show is going to be on Monday night. This is a second Patrons Hangout. Going to having two this month, where just anyone who is a patron is welcome to join the Hangout. And we'll discuss whatever it is they want to talk about. And if you're watching, you can always post in the chat box, and we may or may not get to your comments, but I will be keeping an eye on it. So before we get started, quick, just an apology to everybody about the fact that there was no video this week. As my patrons know, but for those of you who didn't know, at my real job, I've had to work 15 days straight. Today was my first day off. On the first 2 weeks, I worked as best I could to get some content out on Thursday, but this week it just didn't happen. So hopefully this upcoming week will not be nearly as hectic and everything will go back to normal, but I apologize for that. Anyways, I'm joined by Night Shift 10,000, Meg, and Scorch 88. So whatever they want to talk about, these patron hangouts can be serious, they can be not serious, they can cover anything under the sun, and as we've seen in the past, they absolutely have. So how's it going, guys?
Going good.
Just in here, still playing Pokemon Green.
Okay. Oh, yes. Before we got started, Scorch mentioned he has managed to get a copy of the original Pokemon Green, when the first Pokemon Red and Blue, which were released in the States in 1998, were Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, released in 1996. So PNWSNP 21st Century, hello. He's joined the chat box.
Hello.
But yeah, those of you who follow my gaming channel and have been to these streams know I'm a huge fan of Pokemon, as is Scorch.
And you need to play more.
And I do need to play more. But as I said, I didn't have enough time for videos this week. So
for your own mental sanity, you need to play and relax.
You're not wrong about that, Mag. You're not wrong about that.
Man, that is complete BS that you had to work 15 days straight. I mean, at least you got a promotion, but I mean, that is complete BS. I'm glad you're getting a day off.
Yes, thank you. Happens every now and then.
But now you have even more of appreciation for your weekends.
That's true. Packness says my 2 cents having a hangover. Actually, no. Although I could have spent today doing drinking, I ended up spending most of it napping, which I think under the circumstances was a better course of action.
Who how can I put this?
Patrick Rooney, hello. Yes, Meg.
I'm trying to form the sentence, but I don't really know how to form it. Who, when you want to relax or you're super stressed out, you go to the bottle. Like not the majority of the time you go to the bottle instead of something else. And if you would go to something else, what would be your main thing that you'd go to? Go.
you're asking me what do I do when I'm super stressed out? Well, I'd say I guess it depends on what kind of stress. I honestly, like, if I'm stressed out, like worried about something or overthinking something, typically going to the gym helps the most. If I'm physically exhausted and can't focus, pretty much I just binge watch some mindless TV like Family Guy or South Park. And if stressed out, like I can't sleep,
ASMR.
Yeah, but honestly, yeah, I do listen to ASMR. So I don't know.
I go to my wife.
Of course.
Of course, good for you, Scorch.
Most of the time, I just need her by my side. That's it, and that helps me.
That's always good. I just turn to YouTube.
Well, there's always something on YouTube. It's not necessarily going to make you less stressed out, though, so you got to be careful about what you select.
But I've been around long enough that I know what to do.
All right, excellent. Night Shift, how about yourself?
Oh, what was the question again?
Mag's question was, when you're super stressed out, what do you turn to de-stress?
Oh God, does drink heavily help?
Okay.
I knew
Okay,
you were
so-
gonna say that.
Okay, but yeah, on a serious note, it usually is either like YouTube videos that I like, music that I like, or I just watch like something downloaded that I like. Like I'm really into the Westworld series right now. Great series. I don't like I don't like any of the characters because none of them are really likable. But it's just mainly the backstory of it is so colorful and awesome. And I would suggest anyone who needs a stress reliever, watch Westworld because it's pretty great.
Okay. I admittedly, I've heard of Westworld. I know it's pretty popular. Is that the one where it's like robots or?
It's like machine humans in the old west or something like that. It's supposed to be a theme park. It was originally written by writer and director Michael Crichton. So I mean, it's going to be good on that one. But
Okay, because I remember reading, I think it was last year, I was reading an article about sex robots. Basically, this guy who's trying to design robots that will essentially be your romantic partner. And in the body of the article, they mentioned Westworld because they said that's part of the premise of Westworld.
Oh yeah, no, you can totally fuck the robots at Westworld. They do it all the time. But I mean, that's literally kind of the premise of the series is that these robotic humans, they don't have any real consciousness or memories until something starts happening in the Westworld park, and then they start like having memories, consciousness, and they start remembering all the people that have that have either raped them or murdered them, and it just starts getting really ugly on that one. So that's kind of the background. That's kind of the underlying premise of the series.
Okay, and it becomes one of those sci-fi movies are notorious for exploring the deep philosophical questions of life. What is it to be human?
Yeah, exactly.
When does an artificial intelligence become an actual intelligence? Those kind of things.
And
Yeah.
something I've kind of thought about recently is just people are like so scared of like, oh, if you make robots too smart or whatever, or you become too dependent on robots, they're eventually gonna like take over the world and become like, they will enslave us or whatever. But the thing is that I don't think people understand how stupid robots are. You have to tell them literally every single command when you code them. You have to tell them every single command, and they cannot think for themselves. So, though, like, I like a lot of sci-fi movies that do that, but the thing is that would never happen. Robots taking over the world would never happen because robots are very stupid.
Well, that was the thing in Westworld is that they did actually code them up with like human-like intelligence, and they had to limit they had to like limit the intelligence of the machines in Westworld, or else, yeah, they would rise up against their like human masters, which they called the hosts. But in fact, that actually happened with one of them named Maeve. They actually upped her intelligence beyond like the level that they were supposed to, and she became like this super intelligent, like the super intelligent host or whatever that started controlling other hosts or other robots, and that's kind of how it all started. So
Yeah, but the thing that makes us different is the fact that we have a problem and we have to use our situational skills or our kind of problem solving to try to solve the problem. But with technology and robots, we have to tell them how to solve the problem. There's a problem, but we have to tell them how to do it. Robots don't know how to do that for themselves. That's also why humans are evolutionary. Like, we're on top of the food chain because we've been able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Problem solve differently than how other animal species.
Okay.
Having cartel notes on that.
I was gonna say, and I've talked about this actually in my videos on universal basic income, but pretty much for because one of the things that comes up in the discussion is, as we automate more and more, people are going to lose jobs, and I basically pointed out that if artificial intelligence, real like legit artificial intelligence, where robots no longer need humans, there are only two possible. Well, I shouldn't say there are only, but there are two ends of the spectrum of possible outcomes. One is the movie Wall-E The other is the movie Terminator. So worst case scenario, you've got Terminator. The machines get so smart they can build smarter versions of themselves without human help, and they decide to wipe out the human race. A best case scenario, human labor is fundamentally extraneous because robots can literally do everything, and people just become, fat and ride around on scooters while robots literally do everything.
Actually, did you ever see the Animatrix Second Renaissance? Because it's kind of a fusion of both of those.
Okay, no, I did not see that, but
Okay, in that anime, it's kind of a fusion of both of those scenarios. Basically, the robots start out as our tireless servants, and we kind of just become lazy. We could become really decadent because we don't have to work anymore. And then they start gaining consciousness, and then they literally become Terminator. It literally becomes like a Terminator scenario.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I see Pacnicism says, if anything, automation will result in the decline of wage labor, which isn't really that bad. And that was the point I made in my videos. It will never erase the need for human labor. And just as other innovations have done, it'll create new jobs will be created by the freed up time and capital. Unless, of course, AI actually gets to the point that robots literally do everything. But in that case, it's the world of WALL-E, so the point is moot. If robots are literally doing everything, then the point is moot because no one will have to work. And if robots aren't literally doing everything, then inevitably other jobs will be created with the freed time and capital.
But if jobs are doing everything, there will be needing people to make those robots. And if we had robots to make other robots, there would be humans to make those first robots in the first place.
Yeah, yes, the first robots. I forget. And in the Terminator movies, they have a term. I don't know if this originated from the Terminator movies or if they just used it, but they have some kind of. They call it the. I don't remember the term, but the point at which robots are so smart that they can build smarter versions of themselves without human help, and they say that is the point that robots no longer. At that point, robots will no longer need human labor of any kind. The robots will make other robots, but
yeah, but I don't think there'll ever become a point. I don't think there'll ever be a point to where that can happen because robots literally can't think for themselves.
Yes, and certainly that's a.
And I'd like to keep it that way. Thank you very much.
I agree. I would say it's not something you ought to strive for because I think, worst case scenario, you've got Terminator, best case scenario, you have WALL-E. And I think, and even though WALL-E is probably preferable to Terminator, I don't especially think it would be beneficial for the human race to just get fat and sit on scooters all day.
Yeah, but I don't think everyone's going to be like that, though. There are going to be people who still like exercising and doing like a normal life. For example, you. Would you grow fat on a scooter? I'm going to guess no, knowing you.
I definitely would not. So yeah, that's fair. Not everyone would be like WALL-E, but
I get your point.
Yes.
Though, let's be honest, America's already turning that way.
Well, yeah, totally.
Well, yeah, the millennial generation favors socialism to capitalism, showing they're ignorant, stupid, and don't understand how the world works. But given if all their needs were met, they probably would just many of them would just sit back and be like that.
I wasn't even going political. I wasn't even going political. I was just strictly talking about obesity.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, certainly.
Honestly, the only thing that truly worries me about the whole Terminator scenario going down is the expanded advent of artificial intelligence and the fact that we are creating military drones. Because in the Terminator storyline, that's literally how it started, is that the military invented like several different things, including Skynet, the computer that rose up and wiped out humanity or tried to wipe out humanity. And they were also inventing like better and stronger like military drones, and that's literally where like the HKs came from. Was they were originally military drones. So I mean, that's the only thing that really worries me right now is that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's hope they don't all destroy us all, because we know the government wants to do that.
Well, and I mean, honest to God, that's another thing that worries me, though. I mean, with the advent of military drones, I mean, they're already doing it in other countries. How long before they turn those things against us?
Yeah, but again, it goes back to having their own intelligence, and I don't think they'll ever achieve that by themselves. But anyway,
Yeah. Well, I would say let's talk about that, Mag, but that's one for the philosophy department at your local university. Probably not this stream.
true.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, that's actually a topic I have studied in my spare time. But it's one of those topics where the more I read about it, like the dumber I feel. So
Oh, that's just me watching memes. I just feel myself slowly getting dumber.
no. Well, that actually stems back to I'm sure you've at some point you've probably all heard the legend about well, I guess I don't know whether I would guess it's probably historical, but to some degree legendary, where Socrates is sitting in Athens, and one of his students comes to him and says, "Teacher, you are the wisest man in the world." And Socrates says, "How can that be? I don't know anything." And he says, "Well, yes, but the thing is, everybody else claims they know things, but you're actually, but they really don't. You're just the only one smart enough to admit you don't actually know anything." And Socrates said, "Wow, I guess I must be the wisest man in the world." The point being, he'd reflect, Socrates, the epitome of the Athenian philosopher, the rising stars of wisdom in that age, and still probably wiser than many people who have lived ever since. Always was willing to admit his ignorance and starting from the place of not knowing, whereas everyone else tried to pretend like they knew everything. But a quick examination or debate with Socrates would show that they really didn't know as much as they claimed to know.
That's just good advice in general. I don't have a comment on that.
Okay. Well, and that kind of ties into why I called when I was originally deciding to start my YouTube channel and trying to decide on a name of what I would call it. The reason I went with My 2 Cents is because at the end of the day, I'm giving you my 2 cents. I don't claim to be a scholar. I don't claim to be an expert. It's my 2 cents, and you can take it for what it's worth. So
maybe you're the wisest man in the world now.
Well, thank you. Because all one needs to do is read through the comments section of any YouTube video and find there are plenty of people who think they know everything in today's day and age. Very few who are willing to admit when they don't.
I just have to walk outside in Kame, California. I'll just see that everywhere.
Okay. I see Pacna says Aristotle was greater than Socrates and Plato. You're certainly not alone in that viewpoint.
All the internet is filled up with the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I actually wrote an article about that. You know what? Since we're talking about that, let me pull up that article I wrote a while ago about accusations of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Do you still, even throughout this week, were you still doing stuff on your article?
On my blog?
Mm-hmm.
No, I haven't posted a new blog since Richard Wolff debunked. I would have posted the video about the left in Islam, except that was already a patrons exclusive, so it already has a corresponding blog post.
I feel like those are already pre-scripts for you. If you don't have anything, here we go. Or you're already making scripts multiple times a week.
True. I end up sometimes if I don't have time to make a regular video, I'll do a video version of an article I've previously written. So, which I could have done this week, but I just...
You didn't feel like recording it?
Yeah, it got to the point where I needed to cut something. And I had to cut something out of my schedule. So, I apologize to everyone, but... Anyways, there's my article. I called it, "You Don't Get It, or Do You?" Nowhere I write about the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I guess probably to sum up my point, I put it in bold. I put it in bold here in the article. If a person making the accusation of ignorance actually understands the topic in question, it should be very easy for them to explain it in a way that even lay people can understand. And my point being, it gets frustrating oftentimes when people comment on your video claiming you clearly know nothing about this. You need to do more research. And I always ask the question, well, where can I go to do some more research? It's at least better if you can, cite an actual source where I might go to do some more research. But where was I going with this? I said
if you want to prove someone wrong, show them a source so you can actually definitively say, no, this is wrong, and here is why, and then they'll go, oh.
But when they say you're wrong because you're not an expert, okay, granted, I may not be an expert, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm wrong. And if you are better educated in the topic than I am, it should be very easy for you to explain why I'm wrong.
And just because you're not
idea is like, just Google it.
But actually, and then I included a quote from Sam Harris's book, The Moral Landscape. Now, I'm going to say as a disclaimer, I've got some serious disagreements with Sam Harris. However, he is pretty smart when it comes to rational debate. And in his book, The Moral Landscape, he wrote, the less competent a person is in a given domain, the more he will tend to overestimate his abilities. This often produces an ugly marriage of confidence and ignorance that is very difficult to correct for.
Right.
The army's filled up with that.
No, nice.
I would imagine so. All right, moving on. Before we were getting started, which of you was saying you saw Avengers Endgame?
Me.
Yeah, Scorch.
Do you want to bring spoilers here? Like even
I do not want any spoilers because I have not yet seen it myself. But just as something to talk about, your assessment. Were you pleased or displeased with Avengers Endgame, and would you say it resolves the issue or leaves another cliffhanger? That's all I want to know.
It was a great movie for the ending of the last 11 years on collective movies. It put
God knows how many comic books.
The collective work of all these movies into this one movie to bring it all to an end.
Okay, wow. Well, good to know. Yeah, it's hard to believe it was 2008 when the first Iron Man came out.
Right.
Yeah, I still remember going to see Iron Man 1 in 2008, not having any idea that it was going to spawn the entire Marvel universe. And watching all the way to the end of the credits, and Nick Fury stands there and says, "I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative," and thinking to myself, "Oh, cool, they're going to make an Avengers movie." But even then, and Iron Man 1 was a great movie, but you never could have imagined how much was going to go into the Marvel Cinematic Universe from that first movie.
Nope.
Manny K. Built, you are absolutely right. He says, especially on my Yang and AOC videos, I've noticed a lot of comments saying, I've done research and you're wrong, but then they don't give any arguments. Exactly. And that's my point. At the very least, can you cite some? And to be fair, there are some people who have left links to studies and academic papers, which I do take a look at. As far as do I respond to those people? Generally, no. For the most part, I make a rule of not responding to comments just because I've learned it is a black hole from which you never escape.
Exactly.
Unless you want to be a troll.
Yes. Although I will say, if I see points that I think deserve address, I will maybe do a follow-up video or a follow-up stream, like in the case of Yang, I did with the Red Pill Dragon. I made one exception against my better judgment. I made one exception to that on my recent Islam video, and I ended up doing 4 or 5 back and forth with a guy who never overtly stated his position, although I think he was, based on the kinds of things he was saying, I'm pretty sure he was an Islamic apologist. You can check out the comments section of that video if you'd like to see my back and forth with him.
And warning, if you're going to be an idiot, you're going to get exposed on Twitter. Just know that.
Well, and his assertion was, he said, I did not debunk Islam. I merely showed why I was unconvinced. And I said, well, if you don't think my argument succeeds, you're welcome to explain why. But I would say, yes, I soundly debunked Islam because I showed that what I believe to be a genuine contradiction within the Quran, and literally any effort to resolve it renders the Quran wrong in one way or another. And since to my knowledge, and again, I don't claim to be an expert on Islam, although I've tried my hardest to study it in detail because it's so prevalent in the world today. To my knowledge, the only evidence Muhammad ever offered to his legitimate status of being a prophet was the Quran itself, but unlike other religious viewpoints like Judaism or Christianity, who would say that their religious texts are supernaturally guided by God, but not dictated by God himself. Muhammad said it was dictated. The Quran was the direct words of God, with no thing, with his own understanding or context being irrelevant to its perfection. So if you could demonstrate that the Quran contradicts itself, then Muhammad's central claim to his prophethood completely collapses.
Wait a minute. You can claim. Hold on. You can claim that any holy text contradicts itself. I mean, that's not mutually exclusive to Islam, though. I mean, you can claim that any holy text contradicts. Wow. Okay.
Hello, guys.
Oh, hello,
Hi.
Soyboy. What's up?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I don't know where I was going with that either. That just popped into my mind that you can really prove that with any holy text.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. You could prove. I think the difference is in some religious viewpoints they're with their respective holy texts. They wouldn't necessarily claim their texts are completely error. And I hate to make sweeping statements because I know within every religious viewpoint there's always various viewpoints, but just take of the three major monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Within Judaism and Christianity, their view of their holy text is not that their texts are necessarily the words of God directly. Rather, they would say they're the words of their prophets, of their apostles, and they would believe that God, in some sense, supernaturally guided the writing of those books, but they're not God's words directly.
Right.
The Quran, on the other hand, Muhammad claimed that what he was reciting had nothing to do with him. It was the direct words of God. Muhammad was, if anything, a mouthpiece. So Jews and Christians at least have some margin. And you are correct, Nightshif. You could demonstrate that there are contradictions within the Torah or the New Testament, but that would not necessarily make the entire religious viewpoint collapse. It would collapse one aspect of their theology, but not the entirety of it. My point was Muhammad's entire claim to prophethood, the only evidence he ever offered, to my knowledge, that he was genuine was the Quran itself and his claim that it was God's word dictated directly through him. Therefore, if you could demonstrate the Quran is self-contradictory, you demonstrate it can't be God's words, and therefore Muhammad's entire authority claim collapses.
Right.
So choose whether you want to discuss about this or not, but just something I kind of thought, this is a question to everyone.
Okay.
If you are religious, what either guided you down that path, or why do you still choose to be religious? And if you are not religious, what made you go down that path, and why do you choose not to believe in any God? You can choose to answer that if you want.
Okay, good question, Mag. What I'm going to say is this. I have no desire to spark a debate on that topic, but if everyone would like to give, their answer, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't want to spark a debate on that one either. Is why I asked it if you want to.
Okay.
Actually, I could cover that. I could definitely cover that. I was going to make a video on what made me kind of become an atheist after a lifetime of being a Protestant Christian, but I can cover that now. I can cover that now. Pretty much.
Just do a small version.
Yeah, I'll give you the abridged version. And this one's actually going to surprise you. I became a libertarian and an ANCAP first before I became an atheist. And my libertarianism kind of led into that because basically from my viewpoint, from my global viewpoint or my world viewpoint, whatever you want to call it, with my libertarianism, with my anarcho-capitalism, with my anarchism, I was rejecting all earthly and worldly authorities outside of myself. I was rejecting all what would you call it? It's not a scapegoat, but it's all people that you can basically blame for things happening outside of yourself. And the thing about it is that I was looking at myself and I was thinking, I'm still a Christian. I still believe that there is like this universal authority that controls everything. And I'm not rejecting. I'm willing to reject global authority. I'm willing to reject finite earthly authority, but I'm not willing to reject this universal authority. And that's what kind of led into it, was that I just started thinking about that. And that's what led into it. But I mean, it also had to do with me reading parts of the Bible. It also had me, like examining, what I believed personally, and it didn't make sense to me. It just didn't make sense to me, and it also didn't make sense to me that I was willing to reject all of this worldly, earthly authority, but not this infinite, unknown authority, and just kind of, yeah. I mean, just basically rejecting all authority and holding myself accountable completely, and just being, who I was. So that's kind of what led into it.
Okay. Anyone else want to go?
I mean, it's similar to Night Shift, except for the whole authority part. I just questioned my faith and all that, and started reading into things, and just the God I described made no sense, contradicting, or even if he did exist and this is what he says and this is what he believes, is no God I would ever want to worship. And pretty much I'm open to the idea of some type of theist existing. I don't think if it does exist, we would know of it. But on that, I don't have any confidence of any other religion being correct, because so many of the texts and so much of the descriptions are so contradictory.
For
P.S. I just want to say this. I'm not trying to insult anyone here. If you do believe that there's a God, that's good. Good on you. I actually would encourage. I almost even encourage people to believe in God. If it, I mean, if you think, if it makes you a more full person, and as long as it doesn't drive you to do anything, violent against anyone else in the name of your religion, I would actually encourage it. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm insulting them by saying anything that I say. I'm just giving my life story.
Of course. Of course,
I completely agree with
I
that.
100% agree, and I think honestly, what frustrates me a lot about religious discussions is like of all the things I like to debate, I do like having religious discussions. I'll say they frustrate me a lot more though, just because people tend to get really defensive when I think
emotional.
There's no reason that you can't, regardless of how strong you disagree with someone, there's no reason you can't have a reasonable discussion about it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, my mother. If you guys ever seen the Big Bang Theory and know about Sheldon,
Oh, Sheldon's mother.
Yeah,
that's my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sheldon's mother is my mom.
I think she's played to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess, Meg, did you want to ask the question? Because otherwise, I was going to go next.
Oh no, you go ahead.
Okay, I would say this. I grew up in a Protestant Christian household. Went to a church that was fairly. I'm going to use this term somewhat loosely, because when I say fundamentalist, people tend to think of like, the Westboro Baptist Church and things like that. Absolutely, that was not the kind of church it was. But it was as far as a lot of what people think when they think traditional conservative Christianity. I was taught young Earth creationism as gospel, those kind of things. That's the kind of church I grew up in. I'd say when I got to be in high school, when I first went to college, I got to the point where I asked myself, I just honestly sat back and I said, is this something I really believe, or is it just something I was, taught all my life? And at that point, I moved more to being an agnostic. But then I tried to honestly ask myself the question, what do I think is true? Where do I believe the evidence leads, regardless of my personal feelings about the matter? And I think one thing that is often missed is in these discussions, oftentimes, something I think one thing that really frustrates me and I think is unhelpful, is used by a lot of apologists of various religions, is to try and claim that if you don't agree with them about their religious viewpoint, you're just in denial. You just you just want, you really know this. Especially, I'm gonna name drop here, not to, because I have no problem calling this guy out. He's an idiot. But Cy Ten Bruggencate is a more famous Christian apologist on the internet, and this is essentially his entire apologetic. When he goes and talks to atheists, he says, you just want to live your life of sin. You say you don't believe, but I know you do. So like repent right here or now, or else God will judge you. And to that, I would say, even if Sai is even if he's correct in his assertion that really is what's going on, that doesn't prove he's right. It could be the case. It could be the case that the person secretly does believe in God and just wants to sin. But even if that's true, that doesn't prove that Christianity is true and atheism is false. It's just him making an accusation, and that's totally unhelpful in the discussion. So I will always I try to just take people at their word. If they say they don't believe, then I'm not interested in what might secretly be going on in your psyche. I'll take you at your word. But I'd say what I ended up looking into the question, how I came to my own religious viewpoint. I would say I first asked the question before we get into theism. I just asked the question of deism. Is there a deity of any kind, whether he's involved in the universe or not? Go back to the classical philosophical arguments of Thomas Aquinas, Gottfried Leibniz, and others. I've particularly found the work of J.P. Moreland and William Lane Craig to be useful. But at that point, I am a Protestant Christian, and I would say the reason I am is because after having conducted that study, I became convinced that it was true. I understand that not everybody does, and I'm happy to have that conversation. But I'd also never, if you tell me, well, I don't believe, I'm not going to insult you by claiming, yes, you really do. I'll take you at your word. And at the end of the day, you're either convinced or you're not. So I guess that's what I would have to say. So
also, quick mention, somebody who does actually think there is a God, but they just want to sin, that's not an atheist. That's an anti-theist. That's basically somebody who is anti-theistic and secretly believes that there is a God, but no, that's not atheism. That's actually not atheism, just for anyone who's curious.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. May I talk?
Also,
but
there was one more
good question, Meg.
There was one more thing that I wanted to go into about myself, kind of when I was a Protestant Christian, or at least when I considered myself one, is that there was also the concept of Jesus dying for us, and like basically kind of accepting that. I always had a problem with that because just my thing is, I don't like the idea of anyone dying for my mistakes or anyone paying for my mistakes. And if I fuck up, then I want to accept responsibility for that. It kind of circulates back into the reason I gave, but I mean that was kind of another thing. That was kind of another thing about it. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And I'm going to kind of shift. We're going to stay on the topic of religion for just a second. I do want to shift gears, though. And the reason I made the video about Islam, debunking Islam, that I did, is I believe a libertarian society could accommodate just about any number of religious viewpoints are compatible with libertarianism. Islam is the only religion I've encountered thus far that is fundamentally incompatible with libertarianism, specifically because of its connection with government. I would argue some people say religion is the greatest. I've heard some people say religion is the greatest killer in the history of the world. And my response to that is only when it's combined with government. And you can take a look at Orthodox Judaism, Christianity, Mormonism, Hinduism, Buddhism, even more Eastern religions. It seems to me that people who hold those religious viewpoints can, in principle, religiously can coexist peacefully in a libertarian society. It's only when religion is fundamentally combined with government that it ends up being a problem. But Islam requires that it be combined with government.
It's too legalistic.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I used to be a Muslim. Yeah.
Okay. And I understand. No, I always hate making broad brush statements. I understand within any religious viewpoint there are various sects and factions that have different viewpoints. I'm sure there are self-identified Muslims out there who would disagree with me on that point, and I'm not trying to insult you.
There is a different sects of Islam that's more like it's a bit more peaceful, a bit more relaxed. but yeah.
But I go back to the key sources: the Quran, the Hadith, and the life example of Muhammad himself. And I would have to say, from my study, it's clear Muhammad absolutely believed in totalitarian government, himself being the totalitarian ruler. And if we look at the first 1,000 years of Islamic history, it absolutely was a totalitarian regime. And so that is why I would say Islam is unique in that regard, and that is the one religion I've ever encountered that is fundamentally incompatible with libertarianism.
Mm-hmm. I really hate the argument. Oh, you need to learn Arabic to understand the Quran, and yeah, I hate that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I understand that is part of their theological view is that the Quran only exists in Arabic, and for that reason, translations are not the Arabic Quran is perfect. Translations are not, but
like
even still,
the Bible. Just saying because it's not in the original language, you can't trust anything that's in the Bible.
Yeah.
But to that, I would say,
and
go ahead.
also like okay, and also if the Quran is, you can only understand it in Arabic, like how the fuck are you going to convert people to fucking Islam? It's like, yeah.
And I would say to that, if it really is the case that the Quran is not in any way associated with Muhammad, but is the very words of God Himself, would it not transcend translation? I mean, how is it? Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, granted, I do not believe that's a knockdown, drag out argument like the case I made in my video, but it's also something to consider.
May I tell my story, because we're coming close to the end, and I don't want to miss out just because the hour's coming close.
Okay, go ahead, and we can always go over time if we have to.
Okay, and I'm gonna try to keep it. There's some stuff I can't really say, but I grew up in a Roman Catholic household, but the thing is my dad was the one that was like that, and his family was like that. But my mom, she did believe in God, but she wasn't fully like, oh, I have to go to church every Sunday and whatever. So most of the time, since my dad was deployed a lot when I was younger, we didn't really end up going to church a lot because of my mom. And I remember instinctively the exact reason why I will always believe that there is at least a God out there is because of the fact that I've had multiple times to where, like, the reason why I don't pray very often is just because the few times I have, it has actually come true. Like, he's actually listened to me and actually fulfilled that out. Now, I do believe that if you're going to pray for something, he will give you the opportunity to do it, but you have to be the one to actually take it. One time when my father, he got really damaged when he came back from the war, and he was actually like, my mom left us for a little bit, and we were left with like our babysitter and whatnot. And I prayed so hard that my dad would come back out alive, and he ended up being that way. And I had a couple other instances as well. And because he has actually heard my prayers, I have always believed that there is a God out there. Now, I wouldn't consider myself a Catholic, not just because I've always had a problem with like the Catholic Church saying like, if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell or whatever, or they have such a negative outlook on God when in reality he's very kind and loving, and that's one reason why like I wouldn't really consider myself like a Catholic more, but I wouldn't really know where I really side. I just know that I do believe in a God, and I do believe in like God and Jesus, but I wouldn't really consider Catholic, Christian, or whatever. I don't really care where I lie on that department. But because he has heard me before, and I do believe in the teachings of within Christianity or whatever, I do believe in it. But like stuff like what's it called? Like the first original sin with Adam and Eve and whatnot, I don't believe I should have to still be punished for that sin because I didn't actually do that sin. That was somebody else, not my actions. I'm not just born with this sin because I didn't actually choose to do it. I was a baby. I had no choice. At least in that matter, I did not choose to do it. Now, I'm not going to say people don't do sin, because people do. People make mistakes and whatnot. That's fine. But I should not be held responsible for this sin that did not even create or do for my entire life until I do I think they call it baptism or whatever. But yeah, that's me.
Okay.
go. And I know I went to a little bit of discussion thing. I'm sorry, I don't want to do debates here because we don't have
No
any time
problem,
for
Meg.
that.
Like I said, I think it's clear we can all state where we're coming from without having to launch into a debate. Or
Yay.
well, one other thing I'll add. I had to resist the temptation to put this into my video about Islam just because I feel like at the end of the day this itself isn't actually an argument against the truth of Islam, but I also can't resist but to point out that there are a number of Quranic revelations that really make it look like Muhammad was just making stuff up to get what he wanted. In particular, I don't know if you're aware of the two of them. There are. I learned this through David Wood's YouTube channel, Act 17 Apologetics, and then I actually looked into it myself afterwards. But apparently, there are two passages within at least two passages in the Quran, one of which refers to a time where Muhammad's adopted son had a very, very beautiful wife. Muhammad came to visit his adopted son one day and ended up seeing the wife half naked. And he ran out of the house praising Allah. When his adopted son realized that his adopted father was attracted to his wife, he suggested, well, should I divorce my wife and so that you can marry her? And Muhammad said no. But when his wife figured out that Muhammad was attracted to her, she was very much into the idea of being one of the prophet's wives because at that point he was very rich and powerful and she would have influence. So at that point, his adopted son ends up divorcing his wife and Muhammad marries her, which in the Arabian culture at that time was despite the fact that he was Muhammad's adopted son and not blood relative, that is tantamount to incest. I mean, for one, besides the fact that it was adulterous in the sense that Muhammad wanted another man's wife and then that man divorced him so that Muhammad could marry her. It was his adopted son. Well, Muhammad then ends up receiving a Quranic revelation from Allah saying that Allah needs Muhammad to marry his adopted son's wife just so that in case in the future, if other Muslims struggle with this, they know that this is an okay thing to do.
Wow.
And it's like, seriously, that is part of Allah's eternal word. It was so important for all Muslim men to know that it's okay to marry your adopted son's divorced wife that he needed to make this part of their key religious text so that they could understand this.
Yeah, convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, convenient. And further, the practice that ended up putting an end to it. The practice of adoption ended up being put an end to in Muslim culture. There is no longer any adoption. So, which seems to me to be a fairly humane practice. You know, a child loses his parents, another family takes him in and raises them as their own. That seems, on its face, to be a fairly good, humane thing to do. Yet it is abolished in Islamic culture because Muhammad had to have the beautiful wife of his adopted son.
Yeah.
The other point being, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, the other story that seems very suspicious is Islam. In Islam, a man is allowed to have up to 4 wives. However, Muhammad was specifically given an exemption because he was the prophet. He could have as many wives as he wanted, but at a point where, and I think he had at least 9. I don't know the exact number. Again, I'm not an expert, and it's been a while since I've done an in-depth study of Islam, but at a point where I believe Muhammad had 9 wives, he had a slave girl named Mary the Copt, who was, according to the Hadith tradition, was gifted to him by someone else as a slave. She was a very attractive young lady. One day, Hafsa, who is one of his wives, is out of the house. Muhammad has sex with Mary the Copt in Hafsa's bed. Hafsa comes back and early from the marketplace and catches Muhammad in bed with Mary the Copt in her bed. She's of course very angry that Muhammad's 9 wives isn't enough. You have to have sex with your slave girl and in my bed, much less. She goes and tells Aisha, who's at the time Muhammad's favorite wife, and Muhammad's wives blow a lid. They are angry that he's cheating on them. It's bad enough you already have this many. Each of us is to some degree singled out because you have multiple wives, and still you have to have sex with your slave girl and in one of your wives' beds nonetheless. And Muhammad, is taken aback. He realizes he's in trouble. His wives are angry. So he swears an oath to his wives, I will not have sex with the slave girls ever again. Well, lo and behold, Allah gives him revelation and says, "Oh prophet, why is it's?" And I'm paraphrasing here, but it's Surah 66, if I'm not mistaken. It says, "Why do you deny yourself that which is good and that which Allah wants you to have? You seek to please your wives, but then essentially Allah nullified the oath that Muhammad made. I promise my wives I will not have sex with my slave girls. Allah nullifies the oath and says, I didn't tell you to make that oath. I'm nullifying it because I want you to have sex with your slave girl. And further, it's your wives who are in trouble for trying to tell you not to have sex with your slave girl." Again,
instead of not having slaves, Allah tells him, no, you can have slaves and you can have sex with them. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. No, again, does that in and of itself prove that Islam is false? No, but makes me fairly suspicious about.
Yeah.
I just say on its face, what's more reasonable, that Muhammad was really receiving revelations from God and God wanted so bad for him to have all his sexual desires fulfilled, or was he just in a position of power and was making stuff up to get what he wanted? I'm inclined to think the latter.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Well, Muhammad was very collectivist.
Yep.
Extremely collectivist.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can't say I disagree with that either.
Something I just want to say again before we run out of time. I believe in God, but not the church. That's just the last thing I wanted to say on my thing. I forgot about that. I believe in God, but I disagree with a lot of the church. Go on.
Okay.
G Devil says, "What the hell have I stumbled upon here?" I'm sorry, G Devil. I understand this is a different kind of conversation, but these hangouts are just for talking about whatever. So, unless of course you're referring to the debate I see going on between Patrick Rooney and technicism.
Oh, there's a debate going on in the comments?
Oh, yes,
There
is.
usually is, always.
Okay.
There usually
Hey
is.
guys, AR-15s are trending on Twitter again.
Excellent.
Oh, joy.
Speaking of which, if you guys have not checked out my latest tweet, David Hogg tweeted out earlier today, I guess in response to Mike Pence, who said this administration is committed to protecting the Second Amendment. David Hogg said, "Remind me, how many AR-15s did Jesus own?" And I tweeted out a link to a YouTube clip of the Family Guy scene, Passion of the Christ 2, Crucify This, in
Yeah.
which Jesus is running around with a Uzi.
Nice. Nice.
Was guns around during his time? I don't think so.
No,
No.
they were not.
No.
So,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
never mind the fact that
gunpowder
Jesus
wasn't
was,
even invented yet.
yeah, never mind the fact that Jesus was executed by the government. If you've read the New Testament, you'll understand that the Sanhedrin who wanted to kill Jesus had to go to the Roman government, and they said specifically because they had no authority to execute, but the Roman government obviously did. So,
Yeah.
regardless of your religious viewpoint, one thing we can all agree on: Jesus was executed by the government, and they would, and the people who hated him wouldn't have gotten away with it without the government's help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Basically cops back then just saying, just doing our job, Mr. Christ, stop breaking the law and we won't have to do this. Ugh.
If I
Pretty
remember
much.
correctly, what kind of started it was the fact that he was mad that the government was making so people who would have to like pray towards the temple, whatnot, but they had to do it within a certain currency. So they had to change the Roman currency to the Jewish currency, but they were getting taxed on it. And Jesus didn't like the fact that they were being exploited to pray to him and his Father. So he
Jesus
kind of
was-
went out in a fight.
Okay,
I
you're
have it
referring to
correct?
when you're referring to him overturning the tables of the money changers in the temple. It's not actually that's
It wasn't the government he was mad at. It was the church.
Okay.
Because the church says you cannot sacrifice any lamb or any sheep or any dove. You must use ours. And the only way you can buy ours, you have to transfer the money. So it's all extortion.
Yeah.
Okay, dokie.
Mhm. Anyways, we are getting to the end of the hour. Perhaps we should turn to something a bit less serious. But
Check my
So
Twitter. I'm
probably
drawing
no.
naked girls.
Yes, Mag mentioned she's been actually Mag has been working on a gorgeous mermaid drawing that's she's tweeted out recently, asking whether you like scales or smooth tail better. So go ahead, help her out, and vote on that. I personally like the scaled tail. I think it looks more realistic, but everyone is entitled to their opinion.
How many cell phones did Jesus own? Checkmate.
Nice.
Yes.
Also,
Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna
Alright.
say this quick. No need to make this a discussion, but just to let everyone know, I have unfollowed Liberty Hangouts, and I recommend you do the same.
Oh, I did that a long time
I'm
ago.
just gonna
Oh,
follow
what is-
them
what-
for their
I actually
hate
don't
fire
know.
tweets. I'm just gonna follow them to have a good laugh for being retarded.
Yeah, perhaps. I honestly have no idea what Liberty Hangouts about anymore.
I don't know
I
either,
found-
and I'm just gonna say this: Heartless. I love your edits of their little Liberty Hangouts thing, especially the one with like the Democratic like American flag one. That just made me laugh so hard. He does really good edits on those.
And I'm going to say for the record, I hate people who say you're not really an anarcho-capitalist or you're not really a libertarian because we disagree on such and such point.
Yeah.
I
Go
think
true,
it's stupid.
Scotsman.
Like within any ideological viewpoint, you're always going to have disagreements. Just because you disagree with somebody about this or that does not mean the person doesn't, you don't fall under the same ideological camp. But as far as Liberty Hangout saying that true libertarians are the GOP, I'm sorry, I'm going to break my own rule here. You cannot claim to be an anarcho-capitalist.
They've made a tweet
Yeah.
in 2017 that said that the plan was to try to pretend to be a libertarian so they can get in and try to get more libertarians to vote Republican. So it was actually their goal from the beginning.
Yeah.
Something I just want to state is a little bit of a disagreement. Is just that, though I do agree with that for the most part, is that, let's say, for example, you believe, though you're a libertarian, you basically believe in pretty much about 50% of what the state does, yet you're an anarchist. Those things are not aligning. That's just one add there. There's a certain limit to where if you believe in certain stuff, believe in a lot of stuff about the state, maybe you actually aren't. Does someone have a disagreement there?
I think
Someone heard my thing better.
you could principally have the same values of I think you could principally have the same values of many people in the Republican Party. But if you believe that the government can
I
justly,
believe in welfare. Am I a libertarian?
well, it
I mean, if
depends.
you're- If you're for private charity,
Yeah,
then,
being for private charity, you could still be for a libertarian. If you support stealing some people's money at gunpoint and giving it to others, then no, you couldn't be a libertarian. Which is why I still hold that libertarian socialism is an oxymoron.
Exactly.
Yeah, I heard the argument. Oh, but libertarianism, it was first coined by anarcho-communists. No, that's not fucking true.
No.
Watch SO's
Nope.
video.
Yeah, and Shane Killian's video too on what was Lysander Spooner a socialist? He absolutely tears that one apart.
Oh yeah, Benjamin Tucker, like a lot of the first like the Boston anarchists, they received the worst historical revisionist treatment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say this as a little nitpick. I know it's already towards the end, but so I can you stop swearing so we can keep this demonetized.
Sorry.
I mean monetized.
2 cents.
Well,
Okay.
nice ship already dropped the F-bomb earlier.
Yes,
all
you
right.
can only do a certain amount.
It happens inevitably. I think we're probably fine. I try to keep the swearing to a minimum, but I do it myself. So
Yep. So, I don't know if you've already kind of said this or whatnot, but when are you doing the 2 day with 2 cents? You said it
Today
was
with 2 cents
Monday?
will be on Monday.
Oh,
Well,
Okay.
Yes, we'll see what news stories. I actually saw. Hopefully, I'll have time to research it. I see there was a shooting at a synagogue today, so that's something we
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have been able to cover. Only one person died. Well, one person is too many, but comparatively to some recent terrorist attacks, that's relatively low.
Yeah.
Wait, would
Uh,
that still be considered terrorism if it's only one?
Well,
I mean-
I guess they're
Well-
saying it's a hate crime.
Mhm.
From the article I read from the Daily Beast, it's another white supremacist saying all Jews need to die. But,
All it requires to be a terrorist attack is that you use force, destruction, even killing for a political or a religious reason.
mhm.
All right, did the people who are tweeting? Shoot, they're saying this is a mass shooting. According to the FBI, I believe they consider a mass shooting is when like 4 people are dead.
Yeah, but
And it's just
But the anti-gun lobby keeps having to change the definition in order to maintain their own narrative, because every time they pick a definition, the data ends up proving wrong. Because yes, the FBI does use 4 or more, but I know in a gun control video that Shane Killian debunked, he pointed out that they said they changed it to 5 just so that they could exclude certain They were trying to claim there had been no mass shootings in Australia since the quote unquote gun buyback program, but they had to change the definition from 4 to 5 in order for that to be true. So basically show they're willing to just use whatever definition suits their agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, in fact, gun ownership in Australia has in fact increased. Most people are getting it in the black market, and especially now since it's really easy to get a gun. All you need to get is a 3D printer, and you got a gun.
True.
But the biggest lie about the Australian gun buyback is everyone says right after that happened, gun violence went down. But but what they don't tell you is that gun violence had already been dropping, and the rate does not change, and it continues dropping after that, but the rate doesn't change at all. So there's no correlation to suggest that had
It's an
anything
outside
to do
factor.
with it. Exactly.
It wasn't that. I remember Esso doing a video on that, debunking that. Didn't he say it was actually homicides and not crime? I don't remember.
Well, yes, and all they're looking at is homicides, not crime. And there's another study which I can't remember off the top of my head, but it examined rape, home invasions, and other crimes against persons all went up. So yes, firearm homicides went down, but rapes, home invasions, and other crimes went up, and it wasn't an insignificant boost. So
more people now have guns in Australia than they did ever before, because when you try to enforce gun control, all that causes is a higher demand for protection. That's what it does.
Yep.
But this is a good thing for agorism, so that's another point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. On that note, we have reached the hour. So, if anybody has any closing thoughts, now's the time for them. Comment section. If anybody has any final thing you want to very, very quick talk about, go ahead and post it.
Taxation is death. Bye.
Statism is a religion, and atheists who worship the state are not atheists; they are stateists.
Agorism will win. End of story.
Well, you know what? And I'm looking at my email just now, and I see Pacna, you pledged $1 again, so thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else got a meme?
All right, well, tune in Monday night for 2 Day with 2 Cents. New video coming out this week. And after that, I got a super collab coming with Mag and Night Shift 10,000. So stay in tune. Wait for that. And then at some point in May of 2019, Sports Illustrated 2019 will be released, and Night Shift and I are talking about doing a review video of that. So
I just
Go
remembered
ahead.
something. Can I say something really, really quickly? I have been a patron for 2 cents for a year now officially. Yay!
Awesome, Meg. Thank you so much for your support, and to everybody who does support the channel, thank you so much. I love you guys so much, and that'll bring that stream to an end. So, as always, that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth.